I will make a couple questions.
Okay.
How many children do you have?
I have 2 children.
How old are they?
Jane is 14. She's a freshman in high school. And Peter is 10. He's in 5th grade.
Okay, good. Why do you decide to homeschool your kid?
Well, there's really 2 answers for that. I was attracted to the idea because I had some friends who had homeschooled and I admired the lifestyle. Brad wasn't very excited about homeschooling. He respected it in my friends, but he had had such a happy experience in public schools that he didn't see any reason not to just do that. However, at the time, we were living in a bad neighborhood, as you visited my home there, and the local school was educationally awful. And my daughter would have been the only white child in the school, literally the only one in an African American school. So then I had some choices to make. We could try to send her, like the Chicago Magnet school system, you can get into a better school somewhere else in the city. So we could try to put her in a better school, but it would probably mean driving a lot. And I do have friends who made that choice. I have one friend who spends between 2 to 3 hours a day, every day, just getting her kids to and from school. So we could look at a magnet school or one of the upper tier schools in the Chicago system. We could look at a private school, which would have been paying a lot and driving a lot. Or we could homeschool. And we ended up, since I was attracted to homeschooling anyway, we thought, well, let's see how this goes. And we just enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
We found that the lifestyle fit our family so well, and we found that there was a really good community of other homeschoolers nearby, so that we did not feel that our children were missing anything. We had more than we could take advantage of. There were more opportunities than we even had time for. So we just kept going, and now I'm firmly committed to it. I really love homeschooling, and I think it's been really, really good for our children.
It's good,
Yes.
really. I think, yes, it's a very good idea. Do you teach both kids in the same time or separately or?
Well, with my children, there's 4 years difference in age, so there's not a lot of overlap for them. Now, I do have friends whose children are closer in age, who do maybe teach history to all the kids. That has never worked well for me. I do, in the morning, I read out loud to my kids. They have their own stories. I read to Peter, I read to Jane. But in that time, we also might have a quick 10-minute discussion. Like, for example, we did a nutrition course where we would talk about one principle about good nutrition, just for 10 minutes, the 3 of us.
Okay.
But then they do their own work. Jane, as a freshman in high school, has a totally different workload than Peter. So it's not really together for us. But for families where the children are closer in age, they might overlap some things, but not others, just depending on where their child is at, what they're learning.
So it's more work for you because you have to maybe spend 4 hours or 2 hours, or depend for one kid, and 2 hours for the other, because you can't work together in the same table.
Well, yes and no. With homeschooling, you're not as likely to spend a whole hour instructing.
Okay.
When they're very small and they don't know how to read, then you have to do a lot more of that hands-on. But by about like 2nd or 3rd grade, when the child is reading and able to do some work independently, you might work with one child for 10 or 15 minutes, and then that child can then go do an assignment on their own, and then you flip and then work with the other child. And the older they get, the more independence they have in their schoolwork.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I spend more time with Peter, a lot more time. But it's we'll talk for a little bit, then he works on his own. Then talk for a little bit, then he works on his own. That's how his day goes. For Jane will work an hour or two alone, and then talk to me for 15 or 20 minutes. I'll check her work, and then she'll work a couple hours on her own again.
Wow.
So she's very independent with what she does. She doesn't need as much direct instruction from me.
Okay, well, it's good, no?
Yeah.
Because, they learn how to study by themselves.
Yeah, they
Because
learn how
it's
to
very
study
difficult
themselves.
for the student, for the children, study by themselves. Always they need, well, in general, they need supervision, but they can do it by themselves. So
Right.
it's good.
Right.
Where do you learn how to teach? Somebody help you, somebody teach you? Because it's not difficult. It's very difficult, I'm sorry, to teach. It's not easy.
Well, I think that anybody who is determined
Mm-hmm.
to help this child can. When you're one-on-one with a child, anybody can, if they just keep working at it, they can figure out how to teach. Now, most homeschoolers, when they come against
Mm-hmm.
a difficulty, the child is not learning well, or
Mm.
maybe you feel like you're not teaching well, we talk to each other.
Okay, this
Okay.
is very good.
Yeah, which is why having a homeschooling community is important. It's very common for homeschoolers to have like a chat group on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
or a local group with once or twice a month meetings, or over time you build friendships. And so if say a homeschooler with older kids, you might ask, has your child had this problem? I'm not sure what to do. And so there's a lot of advice just within the community. The other thing is that when we encounter a learning difficulty that we just can't get over, we do have the same options that any public school parent has. We can hire a tutor or ask other people, or so you work it out. What I don't know how to teach, I can find somebody else who can help me.
Or for example, Spanish or another subject. Do you speak Spanish?
I personally don't speak Spanish, but my children have been learning. Peter started Spanish when he was 4.
Mm-hmm.
Jane was almost 8 at that time, and I hired a tutor for her. So we've done a combination of computer courses and tutors. I've always hired tutors for Spanish. Another example would be that when Jane was having some trouble with math, I hired a math tutor to help us. Though there's also my husband is
I thought
very,
it.
very good at math, so he helps quite a bit with that. Right now, as a high school freshman, I did not feel comfortable teaching science.
Because it's difficult.
It's difficult, and I was an English major in college. Science is hard for me. So I actually have Jane signed up for a class outside our home. She has a separate science teacher. She works in a group outside our home on science, and that's how she'll get her credits. Other times, like for high school, a lot of parents will send their children to community college for just 1 or 2 courses.
Do you
So-
do this?
Not at the moment, but we might.
Okay.
It's an option.
Okay. Yeah. How many hours your kids study per day?
Okay. Peter probably spends like 5 hours or so.
Very good, Peter.
It's hard to add up sometimes. We start at around 8 or 8:30 and finish up sometime in the afternoon, but we take breaks. So Peter will work for an hour or two, and then go play for a little bit, and then he'll work another hour or two. So I think it's like 5 hours.
Like in Argentina, the kid, they study or they go to the school 4 hours
Mm-hmm.
per day, and they have the small break,
Yeah.
15
Yeah.
minutes.
A little
don't
recess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now Jane's hours are much longer. She works, like an easy day for her might be 6 hours, but I think she's more like 8 or more depending on the homework, which is about what, now, for younger children, you can teach one child more quickly than you can teach a classroom full of children.
Yeah.
So in first grade, you can expect to spend an hour or two,
Mm-hmm.
and you've covered everything that a classroom would cover. In high school, you don't have that difference anymore. In high school, a child who goes to a traditional school will spend 6 or 8 hours at school
Mm-hmm.
and then have homework.
Mm-hmm.
For a homeschooled student, they don't, they usually do spend, I think the minimum that you could accomplish high school in is 6 hours of hard work, but I think for most it's more like 8 or more. And that's fairly comparable to what a traditionally schooled student would spend.
Oh, yeah. No, it's almost the same. For example, Peter 5 hours. Well, here I think it's a little more 6 hours. I think, no.
For Peter?
Yeah.
I
I
think
don't know
so.
the American system, but
Oh, yeah, let's see, he would be, yeah, it's like 6 hours in school, 6 to 7 with lunch and everything.
Yeah.
So he takes a little less time, but not,
no homework.
no, because his homework is done in that time.
Mm.
So it is less for him then. I believe that he accomplishes the same amount as a public school
Yes.
student, but since it's just one student, he can move.
Very fast, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Okay. You told me that you had a group support.
Yes.
And what happens, for example, if you have to teach biology and you need a microscope or you need another tools that in your home you don't have? What do you do? Do you rent? Do you, I don't know.
Well, you figure it out one way or the other. Microscopes are easy to buy.
Okay.
So when we bought ours, I asked some friends, and I go to a homeschool conference every year,
Okay.
where they have seminars to teach us how to teach. And there's a big vendor hall where you can buy homeschool materials because they're not usually available in normal bookstores. You can order, through the internet or something, but the homeschool conventions are really wonderful because you can see the books, you can actually look at the materials yourself. And I actually went to a science seminar, and the teacher recommended a specific type of microscope. And then I asked other friends, what do you think about this microscope? And like I had a friend who was a high school science teacher. I had a friend who was a nurse. They said this is a really good microscope. So then I knew to get that one.
Okay. Do you have to pay something for the seminaries, or it's free? Or for example, if you need somebody give you advice or something, do you have to pay for have or be in the group, in the association? Or
Well, it's really both. If I want to go to a convention, obviously I have to pay for that.
okay.
But within the homeschool community, there's a lot of sharing, sharing or trading.
Okay.
So for the information, usually advice, I can usually find someone who will help. There's a lot of sharing and trading. The trading comes, for example, if This past summer,
Mm.
I struggle with science,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm terrible at experiments. I can't make things work. And it's no fun. So sometimes Brad would do an experiment with the kids if I asked him,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't have as much time. You know, he works all day. So I ended up asking a friend whose son was 17-year-old son to do chemistry experiments with Peter.
Okay.
And I actually paid her son, but I had previously taught two of my friend's other children. I taught them how to write because I have a degree in writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I did 1 year high school medieval literature course
Okay.
with two of her children. And I had previously taught for free two of her children to do inductive study methods with the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So we just trade back and forth. I might ask a friend to teach my child something, and then in return I would teach something that I'm good at.
Mm-hmm.
Another example would be I can sew.
Mhm.
So I might choose to ask a friend to teach something that I'm not good at, and I would teach their children how to sew dresses or something.
It's a very good idea.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
just by talking around to your friends, you work it out. You find ways to trade information and traditionally, often school teachers have a lot of suspicion towards homeschoolers,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not always as helpful as might be. So often homeschoolers are actually very nervous about approaching a professional teacher for help because of concern about the teacher's reaction. And so we're more likely to talk to each other, to other homeschoolers, to try to figure out problems and learn how to overcome. Though there are teachers who are sympathetic, and there are definitely tutors that we can hire to help. But we're more likely to ask each other for help than to approach a professional school teacher because of that suspicion that's there.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm surprised. In your courses as a student, I would bet that you will find people who feel very strongly against homeschooling. Not all, certainly
No.
not all, but I personally know at least one teacher who really does not feel that homeschooling should be done.
Why do you think? Because maybe not all the moms are teachers. Maybe for this or
Yeah,
why?
they're concerned that we don't know how and won't do a good job.
But it depends. I know a lot of teachers that are not very good teachers.
Well, that's true. You're gonna
If they have the certification, I have everything.
exactly. Some will do well and some won't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some are serious, some not. Some, yeah, it's the same.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Where do your children make friends? Because you know,
Oh yes, socialization. Everybody is
everybody's-
always
because
so.
in the school,
Yeah.
people. go
That's
to
the
social-
number one question. When you tell somebody that you're going to homeschool, the number one question is, but what about socialization? People have a misconception about homeschoolers. They think we stay at home and never go anywhere.
It's true.
But actually, my kids join clubs, they join sports leagues.
Yeah.
There's church. We're a religious family, so there's church. But even for non-religious families, there's still the clubs. There's the sports. You can join a homeschool group and get together with other homeschoolers. So my kids have always had homeschool friends, private school friends, public school friends, the neighborhood friends, because we're out doing things. We're out seeing people. It just happens.
I have two more questions.
Yeah.
One question is, what do you think about the American education in general? Do you think
Yeah.
it's very good? Because you told me about the public education
Yes.
a little bit.
I would have to say it's very, very unbalanced.
Mm-hmm.
So the poor tend to get very poor education, and the wealthy tend to get much better education.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the statistics, private schools and wealthy public school districts tend to do well academically, whereas the lower the economic status of your population, the lower the educational quality. So having said that, I am also concerned about some trends that I see in education. Much of what is taught in schools is more what I would consider the province of the family, and so a lot of the schools have become more social work
Mm-hmm.
oriented. I think about more philosophical teachings, teachings about marriage or about drugs or healthy relationships. These things are being taught in school, but I think that those things are more the province of the family.
Yeah.
That's one trend that concerns me. I'm also concerned that there's some math curricula that are being used commonly that I think are just awful.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of panic about raising American students' math scores. And so there's a lot of new educational trends and new textbooks. There's one in particular called Everyday Math that's really just awful. It's awful. Some of the new methods for teaching these things just don't hold up like the old ways. I think some schools don't teach as much grammar, like good old-fashioned grammar. That's a concern. When I was a freshman in college, that was eye-opening for me. I had gone to a very, very good private school for high school. And I actually found that my private school education had been much tougher and much more challenging than my university education. I went to a Wheaton Academy, which is a very good college prep academy. Then I went to University of Illinois, which is a good school. But I found that my high school education had been much, much better than my university education. And that concerned me when I thought about my own children, at what level I wanted them to learn. I felt that I could push them harder and better to better heights. Having said that, though, I don't see schools as bad. Any setting is going to have pros and cons. Any setting is going to have something that it does well and something that it does not do well. So I'm sure, like, there are some things that homeschooling is not suited for. Science experiments can be hard. Dissection in biology, that can be very hard to do.
Yes.
As a homeschooler. You have to look outside for other resources to make that happen. But I think that public schools, I do have concerns about the American, I'm rambling a bit. I think American education is unbalanced, the wealthy versus the poor. I think that some trends are very negative and that they need to go back to how things were taught 40 or 50 years ago, especially for something like math. And I worry about the numbers. When you have hundreds and hundreds of students in one building, even thousands in some places, it seems to me that the ability to make sure that all of them are being taught well diminishes the more students you have. I know when I teach in a group setting, I find that 10 students is about as many as I can do really well. And when I take more than 10 students, I lose track of how people are doing, and I'm not able to keep up with certain individuals as well. So then when I look at a classroom that has 25 kids, I wonder how the teacher can keep track of everybody.
And the levels, no always
Yeah.
the students have the same level.
Right,
So,
right.
so it's very difficult.
Yes, yes.
I know you want to be teacher, or you told me last time.
Yes, yes.
What kind of school do you want to work? My question is, do you want to work in public or private school? Or maybe, I don't know, Montessori, another kind, the pedagogy schools.
My own personal leaning would probably be towards a smaller private school, because it's smaller. I also lean more towards classical style teaching. So I would want to find a school that fit that philosophy. I would worry, in a public school, I just worry about the sheer numbers that I would have to be responsible for. Also in a public school, the teachers don't have as much control or discretion over what's taught, and you can really lose the joy of teaching.
Do you use lesson plans, or do you use something to organize your classes, or?
Yeah, there's a range of what's available. You can buy a curriculum that will tell you everything to do. And there's some curriculum that will even send you a video, and so your children watch the teacher on video and do the homework, and then they do it all at home, but you've gotten that list of what to do, and if you just follow the plan and follow the instructions, it's all laid out for you.
It's very simple.
Yes. And there are a lot of people who like that. I started that way. When I started homeschooling, I bought, we call it a curriculum in a box.
Okay.
Everything you need for the whole year comes in a box with the lesson plans laid out for you. That's what I did with Jane for 3 years. Then I read a book called The Well-Trained Mind that gives all the recommendations for anything that sounds good for kindergarten through 12th grade. So for math, they might say, choose from these 4 curriculums, the one you think will fit your child best. Or for science, choose from these 3 curriculums. They'll recommend what they think is good. But then I, as the parent, choose, and I, as the parent, schedule it. So as I grew in confidence, as I felt more confident to be able to do this, felt like I knew what I was doing, I started scheduling my own lesson plans. So if I have a book, say a grammar book, there's 125 lessons. I schedule 4 or 5 lessons per week, and we'll get done within a year. So I can just do that on my own. For the classes that I don't feel as comfortable teaching, I might order something that plans it for me. But for something like writing or literature, which I'm very comfortable teaching, I will choose the books myself, I will schedule it, and I will plan it because I'm able to.
Do you take the test, your children, or another, I don't know, you have to go to the school and the teacher, I don't know how is the system?
Right. Illinois does not require testing.
Huh?
No, I do test my children to make sure they've learned what I've taught them. So we might read a chapter of history and then they have a history test. They study spelling words all week, then they have a spelling test, right?
How do they know that your children learn the objective of the goal that they require to in order to pass to another grade?
Well, I don't see why the government has to know.
Okay.
It's on me. I
Okay.
want them to be equipped for life. I want
Okay.
them to be able to get into college.
Uh,
So I teach them what they'll need
Mhm.
for college, and if they get in, then I've succeeded, right?
so yes, but they don't have to, I don't know how they. For example, Jane, that she
Yeah.
will go to the university.
Right.
So does she have the degree or
Right.
I'm sorry, the
No,
certificate?
I know what you're saying. Illinois does not require testing, right?
Okay.
Okay, but to get into college,
Mhm,
she will take the SAT,
mhm.
she will take the ACT,
Okay.
just like everybody else. She'll have to fill out the same forms to the college that everybody else fills out. And I, as the teacher,
Mhm.
provide a list of what she's accomplished. Okay? I have also chosen to test my children. They take the Iowa Basics, which is a standardized test. That's a choice I made.
Mhm.
Just to have those records,
Mhm.
and they've always done very well.
Very good.
Yeah.
And for example, if you want to or you decide that Peter go to the school,
Mhm.
what happened? Because he didn't take, another classes.
We thought about sending
Mm.
Jane to a traditional high school.
Mhm.
We didn't know if we'd homeschool or high school, and we did apply to a school.
Mm.
So we just did this whole process this year,
Mhm.
but then decided to homeschool. I provided
Mm.
a transcript. I typed up a list of what she had accomplished, what
Mhm.
books we used to
Mhm.
learn it. I provided her Iowa Basics test scores,
Mhm.
and we filled out a form. If she had continued down that path, they would have interviewed her also, which is normal for a private school.
Mhm.
But based on her test score
Mhm.
and based on the curriculum that I
Mhm.
used, they were willing to accept her.
Okay.
Yeah.
In public school is the same or no? You don't know.
It is mostly the same. Just about any school will require a placement test of some
Okay.
sort. And I think that's fair.
Okay.
Even if you were to change schools, they need to know what the student has accomplished. So a placement test is a fair expectation. Some schools are very suspicious of homeschoolers
Mhm.
and act like you haven't really been doing anything at home. Other schools are much more accepting and will evaluate your information more fairly. But I have had friends who had a hard time, not because they hadn't taught their child, they had a hard time because the school officials were suspicious and told them, we're not sure you've actually taught them what they need to know. And that was unfair. A placement test levels the playing field. If the student achieves a certain amount on a placement test, then they should be accepted on their merit.
So it depends because in Argentina we don't have the homeschooling and the education is from the state. So
Right.
it's different. For this reason, I ask you about what happened with the state if you teach your children at home. But I think that it is very good idea to teach. I love this idea. So I think too that it's important that the parents had a very strong compromise with the education, and the school is depending on the school that they recognize your job or no.
Right, right. I do find most homeschooling parents that I know are so worried that they'll miss something that they're very, very, very careful about making sure that they are teaching enough. So I haven't usually found a problem. I mean, there are some people don't teach to the same level that others do. But I do find that most homeschoolers, that their worry for their children drives them to do a good job, you know, so.
Thank you, Shais.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I would like to show you, can I show you my books